the Americans are clearly at a disadvantage. And now that the Iranians are destroying all these bases in the Persian Gulf, the Americans are forced to retreat to places like Jordan and Saudi Arabia and the Israeli regime. And then there are further problems. First of all, they're not able to organize well. Second of all, you're the expert, and I shouldn't be saying this to you, and correct me wherever I'm wrong. It becomes difficult for them to command and control. It's also more difficult for them to carry out attacks. But also, these bases are not designed to hold all this equipment and all these people. So, and then the Iranians have the capabilities to strike those bases too, as we're seeing in Saudi Arabia and Jordan. So, and a lot of these, for example, F-15s, they're not being held, not being taken care of in ideal conditions. The F-35s or whatever is out there in these different bases. So, the big advantage that Iran has is that whatever is really important to it, it's not out in the open. And what is out in the open is replaceable.
Then you got to bring yourself back in.
All right, I got stuck. I was trying to pull up something here to show you a second ago. I want to go into really kind of the crux of this, because right now, if this was just a missile shot and just an exercise, and we shoot missiles at you, you shoot missiles back at us, and we've done it. So I think today's going to be the 12th consecutive day. I think Iran has already hit some targets this morning, so surely another American one is coming later today. Aside from the fact that there's no observable military end state for this, where this is even trying to object, if it was just that would be bad, because it's going to continue to drain at least our missile stocks, which apparently are getting lower. But there's a bigger issue that involved with the United States, and that is the price of oil. Now, the price of oil, the paper oil, has gone up. I think it's $87 right now. So that's already starting to be a big problem. But when you look at here, this is the actual spot price today. $131. That's what people are actually paying for a barrel of oil today, not the futures price, but the actual price here. And so that is going to continue going. That's what's driving everything else here. And all that, of course, is because the Strait of Hormuz remains to be closed. Now, interesting. Oh, wrong one. The United States Central Command, in their daily release from yesterday, says that despite Iranian aggression, the Strait of Hormuz remains open for commercial vessel transit. Since early May, Central Command forces have helped facilitate the transit of approximately 900 commercial vessels and 450 million barrels of oil. Now, that sounds impressive until you realize that since May, that's about 10 or 11 per day, which is about 10% of what it was before. And of course, as you see there, CNBC reported just yesterday that most of those that are going through are on the Iran-linked sanctioned vessels, continuing to dominate any movement. So what the Iran side has opened up is one of the only things going through here. So the question is, how long can Iran keep the Strait of Hormuz closed?
The problem, I think, that the Americans don't, the Trump, the people around Trump don't seem to understand, or maybe they do, I don't know, is that for Iran, this is a war for survival. And Iran knows that the intentions of the United States, the Israeli regime, are to destroy the country. I mean, they murdered the leader, they murdered hundreds of school kids, they bombed hospitals. They just last week, they bombed a children's hospital in Ahvaz, a cancer hospital for children, which was subsequently evacuated. So the Iranians know that they're going to be ruthless. You cannot raise the white flag and survive, and you cannot negotiate with the United States because every time we've negotiated, the United States has they bombed us subsequently, like at the beginning of this war and at the beginning of last year's war. And of course, the United States, they signed the MOU and they began to violate it from day one. Israel did not leave South Lebanon. They continue to bomb the country. They continue to refrain from handing over Iranian assets, and the list goes on. And of course, then they set up their own corridor in violation of Article 5 in the Strait of Hormuz and all that, which your audience knows. So the Iranians know their only option is to fight and to make sure that Trump feels defeated, and until the United States reaches a point where it can no longer be a threat to Iran. For the United States, what does it have to? Why is it fighting? Who knows? They're not fighting for the American people. They're not fighting to protect the country. They're not fighting to protect their citizens. It's all about the Israeli regime. It's all about the interests of Netanyahu and the Zionist lobby in the United States. So the motivation that exists in Iran is very different from in the United States. People are going to be steadfast and tough. So if the United States starts hitting our critical infrastructure, and which means basically targeting women and children, obviously, the Iranians are going to be steadfast. And what are the Iranians going to be forced to do? They're going to have to target they can't target critical infrastructure in the United States. So they're going to target critical infrastructure of those regimes that facilitated the war. What is that going to lead to? It's going to lead to the destruction of all of those regimes, because all of their assets, their key assets, are right in front of Iran. Even the Saudis who have a pipeline that go to the Red Sea, the oil wells are here. They're near the Persian Gulf. All of them are easily destroyed. So if that happens, then millions of people will have to leave for Iraq or for Yemen or somewhere else, and then these countries will collapse, and then we will definitely have a global economic depression, I think far worse than the 1930s. And then we know what happened after the 1930s.
Yes, we do. And that is an outcome that I do not wish to see repeated. What can we make? You talk about the fact that the United States has basically made themselves immune to having a negotiated settlement because we haven't kept to anything that we've said. And I mean, if we only limit ourselves to the 2025 war, the start of this war, and then what happened with the memorandum of understanding, there doesn't seem to be much basis for anybody in Iran to say, yeah, let's have another round of negotiations. And yet, according to Arab media and the Western media here the last couple of days, apparently some in Iran are willing to contemplate maybe another 10-day ceasefire. What can you tell us about that?
No, that's not true. That's not something that anyone in Iran has said. In fact, those who negotiated the MOU are being criticized by a large segment of the Iranian population and politicians for negotiating in the first place, because they're saying, look, you negotiated a deal. The Americans had time to regroup and get some oil out of the Strait of Hormuz, and then effectively push the region toward war again by undermining the MOU. Now, those who supported the deal, they say, well, we knew this was going to happen, but we needed to export a large amount of oil that was stuck in the Persian Gulf. And so we used that window to export tens of millions of barrels of oil and import goods to prepare ourselves for the next phase of the war. Both sides have valid arguments to make. I'm not in any particular camp. But the point is that the argument right now that exists, the debate that exists, is definitely not about a ceasefire so that the Americans can regroup.
And of course, if it was only the Strait of Hormuz and all the things I said would be a big issue, but you mentioned the Saudi pipelines that goes through Yanbu and then has been going out through the Bab el-Mandab, but now, according to Ansar Allah, yesterday, the Houthis here in the West, all of a sudden that is closed, and we had some ships yesterday turned around. I haven't seen this morning's traffic, but what can you tell us about that? Is that an actual thing? Is it actually shut down, or is it something that could come back open?
Well, paper oil, one of the different types of paper oil is now at $94 or so. It was before the show, at least. So obviously, this is having an impact. The amazing thing is that, and this is what I heard, I don't know if it's true, but I think it is, because I've heard it from at least two people who I consider to be pretty credible. The Saudis, when the Iranians sent a plane to Yemen, a commercial plane with crew, men, women, like all commercial planes in Iran. They sent a plane to the capital of Yemen and picked up a delegation for the funeral. And then they went back. They flew back. And then when they were close to the airport in Yemen, the Saudis bombed the airport. And so this was an Iranian plane, an Iranian crew, maybe a few Iranian passengers, I don't know, but I know that the Yemeni delegation and some Yemeni people who are in hospital in Iran for being treated, some Yemeni people went back with the flight. So for Yemen, this was an act of war. For Iran, it angered the Iranians a great deal because of what they did to a civilian flight, but endangering it. But for Yemen, this was an act of war. And so Yemen, which has been under siege for many years by the Saudis and their coalition, and the Saudis carried out a genocidal war in Yemen against Yemen with the Emirates and other countries in the region and with the support of the West, not very different from what we saw in Gaza for years. And then Yemen began to develop drone technology and missile technology. I'm pretty sure Iran helped them. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have indigenous capabilities, they don't have engineers. I'm sure they do, very smart people, but probably the Iranians helped them develop it further. So they began to fire missiles and drones at Saudi Arabia, and that's what led to the ceasefire. But the siege remained. Now Yemen, after this assault on the airport, is saying that the siege has to go. We will not accept the siege anymore. So this was a very stupid move by the Saudis. And those two people who I know said that the Americans pushed the Saudis into doing this, which I think was even more stupid because the Americans already, Trump already has enough on his hands with Iran. He fought Yemen early on in his presidency. He did not win there. And now what is he going to do? Fight Iran and Yemen at the same time? He's not winning on either front. So Yemen has the capability to keep the Bab el-Mandab closed to Saudi Arabia. And from my understanding, this morning, there is the traffic is like it was the day before. So the ships are not going to the Saudi ports.
And apparently they can't go through the Suez Canal in the north either because most of the VLCCs are too large to get through in terms of tonnage, et cetera. So it's either Bab el-Mandab or they just roll around in the Red Sea, but they don't get out. We'll have to see how that will go.
Or smaller tankers, which can go through the Red Sea, would have to go all around Africa. So they're smaller tankers. It's more expensive. They'd have to go and then when they return, since they can't go through the Bab el-Mandab, they'd have to go all around Africa too. So it's going to hit Saudi exports very hard and imports.
Yeah, and we'll see how long they can support that, because one of the things that for Saudi Arabia, even throughout this war, is because they were able to get oil out through, I think it's that pipeline that went out through the southern part of Oman, so they went into the Gulf of Oman and through the Yanbu port here. They got out a little bit less than they had, but because the price of oil went up, their income was about the same. This would put a major crimp on Saudi Arabia, and one wonders how many days or weeks or months they can go without the oil income to sustain their standard of living in their country. So that's a potential friction point that we'll have to see how it plays out. Want to shift gears a little bit to another country in the region. You may have heard of them. They're called Israel. They are making some interesting statements here recently, and I wonder how you view this. Now, I think it's pretty clear at this point that the Benjamin Netanyahu personally encouraged and convinced President Trump to go ahead and join them in this war on February 28th, claiming that if they assassinated Ali Khamenei, that the Iranian government would fall or that the people would rise up, whatever. We obviously know how that worked out, the exact opposite of what we had hoped. But whatever, that was the whole thing in this 40 days of war was between the United States and Israel against Iran. Well, now then, since we've gone back into it here, this has been the Americans that have gone back for 11 straight days. And according to many sources out of the Israeli side, they're saying, you know what, we're fine with that. Why don't y'all just keep fighting this war for a long time? And to me, that is, at least as an American, that is one of the more perverse things I've seen, because the Israeli side convinced us to go in with our armed forces, and now then They're saying, I'm fine with this war between the United States and Iran and not us and Iran. So that way we're not on the receiving end of any Iranian missiles, and it's not our people who are dying, it's the Americans who are dying. What do you make of that?
It just goes to show what the nature of the relationship between the Israeli regime and the United States is. It is a one-way relationship. One side benefits and the other side is hurt, and it's hurt in many different ways. The image of the United States since Gaza has been, if not completely demolished, very badly damaged. If the military in the United States has suffered a great deal, as again you would know much better than I. The economy has been suffering thanks to the Israeli regime. And the Israeli regime its existence is detrimental to the interests of the United States. It's a burden to the